Hey guys, Farooqi Bros here. I wanted to start off today's podcast by once again reiterating that the Farooqi Bros are sending their prayers to the people of Palestine. The death toll in Gaza is over 14,000 reportedly, and nearly half of those deaths were children. The average age of all Palestinians murdered in the last month is 5 years old, so that's something to think about how harrowing the situation is. As we discussed on our last podcast, organizations like UNICEF, the World Health Organization, Doctors Without Borders, and many more have been demanding a ceasefire, and there's been protests around the world doing the same. And while there is a momentary pause on the killings at the moment, we strongly advocate for long-term ceasefire. We urge everyone to educate themselves on the genocide taking place. Just check the link in the description where you can find information on how you can make a difference by calling your elected officials to support a full ceasefire. And our first topic today, and one that I wanted to segue to, is quite relevant to this. And it's about our industry that we've been covering the last few years, and that's Hollywood. Allegedly, and allegedly, we've been seeing pretty obviously there's been a sort of blacklisting taking place for actors or all over the funnel of Hollywood when they're expressing Palestinian support. And I'll give two examples really quickly. In the last week, Susan Sarandon, one of the most decorated actresses of the modern era, was dropped by her talent agency, UTA, after being vocal about the ongoing genocide happening in Palestine. Additionally, in that same week, last week, we've also found out that Melissa Barea, who was like the lead or co-lead of Scream, the last two Scream movies, depending how you see it, she was also fired from Scream 7, the upcoming movie. And she was also very vocal on social media about the injustices against Palestinians. Now, Spyglass, the studio that fired her, has claimed that it was due to hate speech. But a closer look at Berea's social media done by her fans and advocates for Palestine around the world show that there's only been a clear focus on Palestinian deaths or how a majority of elected officials have remained silent on the ongoing genocide. Berea later did release a statement saying that silence isn't an option for her, and which she's very brave for that, because you are losing your opportunities just by kind of speaking on this very important issue. And personally, I just want to say, it's absolutely horrifying how support for a ceasefire can jeopardize career. I mean, it's like a form of modern day McCarthyism, and I want to point that out. And it's dangerous. It's not good, and it sets a bad precedent. Simply put, standing for the oppressed should never result in loss of livelihood.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I think no industry, whether it's Hollywood, your school, your workplace, whatnot, they shouldn't be employing these fear and intimidation tactics against those who are just calling for ceasefire or using their voice to call for peace. And we've seen it so many times before, whether it's students being removed from their organizations, lawyers being threatened with being taken out of their bar status and whatnot. I think it is pretty unfortunate these things taking place, and it really shouldn't be happening. And we still encourage everybody to use their voice, speak out, and show their support to call for a full ceasefire, not just a pause as we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and then lastly, I want to add is this is a Malcolm X saying, but you never let anyone tell you how few your numbers are. Like, in the sense where the support for Palestine, if you all stand together, you can really make a change. It's not about fear and intimidation is being used on a couple of people. If everyone is in unison, then that shows where humanity is standing. So it's just something to think about. We're going to keep, as every podcast goes on, we're going to keep talking about this central issue because it's important to us. It's important to our followers. It's an important thing around the world, and it does affect every aspect of our industry. So it is something we want to talk about, even as we transition to more lighter topics and the topics that you guys know we're going to talk about, like the latest movies and films and reviews and castings and superheroes. I want to just make it very clear, the real superheroes are the Palestinians dying right now. It's the real superheroes are the people who are on the ground helping and supporting these people who are going through so much. I mean, that's where our focus is at. But of course, this is just, we can see this podcast and maybe a little bit of escapism, a little bit of change of pace for your normal day. But even though I still think it's important for us to start off talking about that. So I just want to let you know that's where the Farooqi Bros stand. Me, Zian, Samir, and even Umar, who is not here with us today, but we're all on the same page with this one. All right, so from that, I want to just jump to our next topic. Again, moving to a little more lightheartedness, talking about some DC heroes, which we've all grown up loving. So let's move on to Superman Legacy and the latest casting, because we got Nicolas Hoult finally cast as Lex Luthor. This has been a pretty big rumor, I think, the last year, pretty much. They've been putting him ever since he's campaigned to be Batman, then he's campaigned to be Superman, and every step of the way he doesn't get those two big roles, and it's almost apropos that after not getting any of the world's finest superheroes, he gets the main villain, that's going to be probably reverberating in this new DC universe that's being built by James Gunn and Peter Safran and co. So let's just get our quick opinions. And Ziad, I'm gonna start with you, I guess. With Nicolas Hoult, do you think this is a good casting for Lex?
I think it is good casting. I think it does indicate a lot of maybe the ideas and the plans they have for the relationship between Lex and Clark. It seems by going with a younger Lex to pair with a younger Clark, they might be going more of a Smallville route rather than the traditional older businessman who's already well in power and whatnot. We did see a somewhat version of this with BVS, though it wasn't didn't have any relationship, but it was a younger Lex, so to speak. So I'm glad they are going this direction as well. Or rather, I don't mind. I wouldn't mind the other way either, whereas a more traditional version of Lex. But I think there is now a lot of room for telling a more personal story between these characters, or rather a more personal hatred that Lex might have for Clark or Superman, and then that divide between maybe his relationship with Clark and then his hatred against Superman and how that works and things of that nature. So I think there's a lot of room for them to tell a good story now with this casting. And obviously, as an actor, he's pretty great. So I'm glad that he actually finally got the role. Like you said, he's been trying for Batman, trying for Superman himself, and now he's gotten Lex. So I think he could pull it off probably. It's almost the script is good, the story is good, and it works for what they're trying to tell for these characters. But as right now, just early seeing how it'll pair with the other cast, I think it might work well.
I'll jump in next. I think for me, obviously, the resident Superman fan and all that. I think Nicolas Hoult, thankfully, I think he's not the best Superman choice. When I was hearing his name testing for Superman, I thought, I don't know, it might not be Superman. I thought he might have been a better Batman than Superman, to be honest. But and he's also not privy. He's not new to the superhero game because he played Beast in the second wave of the X-Men trilogy, the second X-Men trilogy that came out. But I think as Lex Luthor, there's some heavy potential here, and I actually like how the cast is shaping up overall. I think between him and David Corenswet and Rachel Brosnahan, I think there is a nice mix of cast that could be pretty interesting. I do want to see it more fleshed out. I do understand there's some elements of bloating in the cast. I think there's a lot of superheroes, a lot of characters showing up, but I think the central ones, and it's going to be Lex, and he's going to be part of this universe for a long time. But Nicolas Hoult, he's a good actor. I mean, the last time I saw him in a movie was The Menu. I can't remember if I saw him anything since then, but he was good in there. I mean, not a Lex performance, but he is versatile enough where I think that whatever type of character James Gunn wants to write for Lex, whether it be a young businessman or Clark's childhood friend, or even if you want to go more eccentric like the Jesse Eisenberg take, which I don't think is going to happen, but if you want to go that way, I feel like Hoult as an actor is very malleable and he can kind of fit into any bucket depending how you go with it. But Samir, I want to jump to you next. I mean, Nicolas Hoult, do you like this pairing? Do you think he's a good mix with Corenswet?
Well, overall, I don't think I've been a big fan of most of the castings for the movie, but I do think Nicolas Hoult has the range as an actor to pull off this role. But for me personally, I just can't picture him as Lex Luthor. I mean, like Zion said, it really just depends on how they write the story for the character, for the role to fit. Because I don't think he could pull off the businessman look as a traditional Lex Luthor. It really just depends on the story. He's a good actor though, and he was pretty good in The Menu. So
yeah,
I'm excited to see it.
I think by default he's probably the most high-profile actor in the cast so far, unless I have this wrong. I'm rolling it in my head. Yeah,
he probably is.
Yeah. So let's see. And usually that's what you do with the Lex Luthor. You have a big actor. I mean, you can make his Jesse Eisenberg Oscar winner. He was right there with Ben Affleck as the two biggest actors in the BVS when the last Lex Luthor movie. So and then let's see how that looks like. So let's move from the world of DC, and I know we're moving through topics quickly, but I think we want to just kind of rapid fire a lot of the topics we have today. And let's do a series of film reviews. There's a lot of films that came out. Of course, Thanksgiving break in America is a big box office weekend for Hollywood. That's why you see a lot of movies come out this week. So let's discuss them. I want to start with the movie that just came out yesterday, and that's Napoleon. This is Ridley Scott's latest movie. Ridley Scott is, I think, I always put him in the class, and maybe you guys disagree with me, but I always put him in the class of like these like legends who are like at the end of their road, and they're just trying to release the next, like they're trying to like cement the legacy that's already cemented in a sense. So I put him in the class of like Ridley Scott, James Cameron, Martin Scorsese, like these kind of like, what we say in basketball, the old heads, like they're out here doing their thing, and maybe they're not the young, like not young, but they're not like the modern fresh blood of like Nolan or Villeneuve or whatever, but they are like these legends, of the past, and they're still going strong. When I saw, I didn't fully realize that Ridley Scott's like in his 80s. Like, he's still making movies, going as fast as possible. But Napoleon, this is his latest film. To be fair, the one that we saw in theaters is not, admittedly, with his own words, not his director's cut vision. That's actually a 4-hour cut that's coming out on Apple TV. I think in the next few weeks or month. But it is out in theaters right now, and I'll give my quick thoughts on it. Overall, I think Napoleon was quite good. I think the cinematography, it's all of, the bells and whistles that come with Ridley Scott's directing is still there. So he's always been absolutely incredible when it comes to war scenes. Like, and he's really good at period pieces. I mean, look at Gladiator, like perfectly encapsulated for that time, and look at Kingdom of Heaven, perfectly encapsulated for the time of the Crusades. So Napoleon, very similarly, it's a full like dissection of that era of war, what war looked like at the time, and what these characters were. In terms of the characters themselves, I mean, he took a certain liberty with Napoleon. Obviously, he used real letters between him and Josephine as like the foundational point. But really, this comes across kind of like the emperors with no clothes. Like it's that theme of like undressing your quote unquote heroes and legends and showing them as they are laid bare. So in this case, a lot of people were kind of worried that, is this going to be a glorification of Napoleon? I can tell you right now, it's not. Like it's Napoleon doesn't. While they show his strengths in war, he's never looked more pathetic on film, and I think that's kind of the point. And that's one of the reasons why I think Joaquin Phoenix is such a great actor to play him, because Joaquin Phoenix does a great job of looking pathetic sometimes, and I think like no one does it like him. Like, where you can look simultaneously like somewhat menacing, but also absolutely pathetic. Because he did this in Joker, and he did this in Beau is Afraid, and of course a lot of his other movies. But he does the same kind of role, and I feel like he's feeding off some of that for playing this character. And then I've always been very high on Vanessa Kirby. I think she's an absolutely fantastic actress ever since I saw her first in Mission Impossible 5 or 6, one of them. So I think she's on, and obviously we know the rumors, but she's, I think, 95 to 99% going to be Sue Storm for the Fantastic Four going forward in the MCU. So you'll be seeing a lot more of her, but I think she was really good in this film as well. So overall, it's not maybe one of my favorites of the year, but it is one of maybe in my top, 15, top 10, top 15 of 2023 so far. So it is really good. And who knows, maybe I'll catch the full 4-hour cut and see if that, makes the movie any better or worse. I do think it felt a little long, even at the 2.5 hours it was, but overall, good. So I gave it personally 4, and could be 4.5, but I'm sitting at 4 right now. Zan, what do you think of Napoleon?
Yeah, I think you really hit on the mark with the Ridley Scott remarks. I think, he's such a proven and like basically legendary director, and you can see his style really just always comes through in whatever film, whatever era he's depicting, and it was no different here. I think he captured like the era of France and this post-decadence, post-revolution time period. And like you said, Joaquin was able to do an absolutely terrific job just taking this character, taking this person and showing them in both like this pathetic kind of way and also this proven general way, because obviously he was proven on the battlefield and he did a lot of almost horrific things on the war in like against his enemies. So I think they did a good job showing his prowess in that sense, but also his own weakness and like basically like small self in his personal life. And I think that balance really good. I feel like I know there's a lot of divisiveness with people, like either you like it or you don't. I feel like that does come from some of like that comedic undertone that makes Napoleon seem pathetic. And because of that, sometimes it'll feel like a little jarring, like, okay, this movie I was just seeing like a war movie, and now I'm seeing this almost relationship film and Napoleon going through whatever he's going through, and it's kind of showing him in a dumb, almost goofy way. So I guess that dichotomy of that is why I think some people might be like, yeah, I'm not really feeling I'm not really getting into this movie the way I should. But I think in its strengths, in the battlefield, in the war scenes, I think it really is very, very well done. I think the movie visually looks very well, as very great as well. So I really didn't have too many gripes with it. I didn't have much of an issue with the runtime either. I didn't feel it being too long. I thought it was all right. I'm not sure how 4-hour cut would be, but though I guess there are places you can like beef up a little more story. But I think as just a 2.5-hour film, I still thought it was pretty great. And I probably land at a 4.5 as of right now. But I guess we'll see at the end of the year, looking back, what I'll change it to if I do.
You know, I wanted to stay on this topic one more thing, but I feel like I brought up almost like a mini topic within the topic when I said that is Ridley Scott on the level of Martin Scorsese, and then I also threw in names like James Cameron in that mix. So, like, I don't know. I mean, Zion, you disagreed with me before that. We had disagreements about, like, for example, Avatar 2, so things like that. So, do you think that those three are in one category, or is one person not in the same category as the rest? Like, do you think Ridley Scott, Martin Scorsese, James Cameron, they're in one like group?
I think they could be. I guess it just depends on your taste of film, probably, because they're all technically very brilliant in the films they make.
I got a better question. Of the three, who's doing best at their old age right now? Who's still standing?
It's Scorsese. Yeah.
So you think
even in his older age, with Kills Flower Moon, with Wolf of Wall Street, with all the more newer age films, he's still showing that, okay, his films are top of the line. They're like the cream of the crop of films that come out. James Cameron, I was not a fan of Avatar 2. I thought it was like a rehash of Avatar 1. So I haven't really been too big a fan of his. I think Ridley Scott's obviously his older work is some of the best as well. Like James Cameron, his older work like Terminator 2 and whatnot. Yeah. And Ridley Scott is Alien and Gladiator and those things. So I think they had absolutely incredible films in the past. Some of the current films are a little slowed down for me personally. But I think Scorsese, he has not slowed down that same way. So I think currently with like in the old age, I think he's still at the top of his game.
Samir, do you agree with John's hot take there, or is not a hot take? It's right.
No, I agree. I agree that Scorsese is probably like a level above the rest in that. I feel like I found it pretty funny, like Ridley Scott's attitude toward the criticism around Napoleon, like the accents and stuff, or historical accuracy. I feel like Scorsese and or whoever else would take that a little more seriously when they're making the movie. So I feel like Scorsese is above. And James Cameron, I was a fan of Avatar. I feel like he's doing something different than the rest. So he's unique.
Yeah, I think James Cameron, he's the guy, like he's the one who can make his vision and still, make $2 billion out of it. Like whereas everyone else, like they're gonna kind of struggle their way through, but he's gonna like just go. I don't know, something about him, like it just whatever. I don't want to get to like is Avatar culturally impactful debate, because someone put on Twitter like a really good video, like they put like Avatar cultural debate in 2023, and it was a picture of Shaq wearing the Celtics jersey. Because it's a watch topic, so there's no point going through it ourselves. But yeah, interesting to think about. So let's move on from Napoleon to another film that came out last week, but still doing very well this weekend at the box office, and that's Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. This is a prequel of the Hunger Games trilogy book, but 4 films that came out with Jennifer Lawrence and obviously very well received. And this, I think I'll go first as well on this topic. Well, coming into this movie, I was quite afraid because I was thinking, oh man, like it's gonna be Fantastic Beasts, like they're time to milk this franchise for all it's worth, like they do, like Hollywood's doing to every single franchise. So like why is this happening? When I haven't even heard that, even though I know there's a book and everything that you can base it off of, but like, do we need a whole movie about how snow became snow? Like, do we need this? Like, so the whole time I'm like kind of like against the movie. I barely wanted to see it, but when I did see the film, I was actually pleasantly surprised. Obviously, I am a big fan of the themes of all Hunger Game movies. Again, very apropos to the injustices we're facing today. But you're going to talk about dystopian themes. You're going to talk about oppression. You're going to talk about societal inequities. The author of Hunger Games herself has said multiple times that she was influenced by the Iraq War when she was writing Hunger Games. So you can clearly see that there are these elements that are through lines. And Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is no different. I mean, that through line is still there. I'm not sure if it was done better than the originals, but it's done well. And I was pleasantly surprised by the cast and crew. I like songs. I know like songwriting is very important to the Hunger Games franchise, and I think they did a good job here, kind of like highlighting the big ones. And I don't know if it's like, I don't know how much of the movie is like patting yourself on the back or like, oh yeah, remember this, and how much of it stands on its own 2 feet. But I think it was better than most films do in this modern era. Like it wasn't like overly saying like, we just came off watching Miss Marvel 2 weeks ago. That's our last podcast was about, and like the keys aren't jangling in front of you in this movie. And the more we've been watching these last few years, the more I get annoyed when the keys jangle in front of me, because now I can see the keys and I can see the hand that's jangling them. Like the studio just says, "Hey, I know this movie's garbage, but remember Beast from X-Men? Like keys jangling in front of you," and that happens all the time. And you can make a case, even Ahsoka to some degree. This show we watched the same thing with Anakin. So we're gonna see that a lot.
Hey,
so,
the difference is that was actually the best part of the show.
Okay, but so was Beast the best part of Miss Marvel movie?
No,
but,
it was equally as bad.
But what I'm saying is, that's what I'm annoyed by. But in this case, no big keys jangling. No Katniss, flash forward or something. Nothing to ruin the film. Like, it'll stand on its own 2 feet for the most part. They did say the word Katniss a few times, but I guess it's part of the book also. I get it. But and then a few times we saw the bow. The bow was sitting on one point. Like I could see what they're doing it, but they're doing it somewhat lightly. So I was like, it's okay. But overall, this is good. Like, I mean, not necessarily in my top films of the year, but I think it is a very solid movie. It's very surprisingly good. And when it comes to your blockbuster films, this is one of the better ones this year. So pretty good with that on my end. Zion, what did you think about Hunger Games?
Yeah, I agree with all the points. I think they did find a very good, balance, because they did not. It was able to stand on the story. Was able to stand on its own 2 feet, its own prequel, rather than pushing the nostalgia bait, pushing that. Oh, here's this, here's that. Remember this, remember that. And I really did appreciate that, because, like you said, it's just almost every movie you see these days. It's always like, oh yeah, here's this, here's that, and that's used to bolster the story. But they did not fall into those traps here, which I was glad to see. And like you said, initially I didn't have low expectations, but I didn't know what to expect going in. I thought it could be garbage. I thought it'd be just all right, but it did end up being pretty good. I think, like the original films, they did not shy away from those themes of oppression, those themes of economic inequality, of societal inequality, and like class status. So I was glad to see that here as well. Obviously, someone on the reverse side, just seeing, okay, here's the story of like what sets Snow on his path to become what it becomes in the original films, which is like the head of the Hunger Games and basically villain number one that Katniss has to defeat. So I had some small issues in the way they paced his story out, but I think overall it wasn't too big of an issue. I still enjoyed the story. I think the acting by him and Rachel Zegler, I think they're both great, and they worked well on screen together in this capacity. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the narrative they tried to tell, and the little bits of like, oh yeah, here's like a little cameo, not cameo, but like here's like a little Easter egg or this, that. I thought it was done tastefully and done good enough where it wasn't overbearing and the film wasn't relying on that to be good. So overall, I did enjoy it more than I ever thought I would.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there, and I think I give a special shout out. I do agree. Rachel Zegler, I mean, her acting, I think, I don't consider her one of the best actresses right now. I think she has a lot of growing pains to like fight through, but I think this film was a huge uptick for her, and I think her acting ability was quite strong in the film. And I think she's gonna be like, she has like a really strong career ahead of her. I think this is a good like foundational point for her as well. I mean, she was good in other roles too, but I think you see films like Shazam 2, and I feel like that's where like she's not at her best, and then this is where she does like really well. So I'm happy with that film. But the one thing I'm mostly happy about is that it's not like Fantastic Beasts. Like it's not that franchise is a very bad taste in my mouth. If you want to ask why. A lot of people, we have debates like, why is Harry Potter being rebooted on HBO as a full series? Well, that's why, because Fantastic Beasts didn't do that well, I want to throw in one comment saying that I enjoyed the Ballad of Songbirds. I'm on the fence with Napoleon, Killers of the Flower Moon. I haven't seen it yet, and for a reason, it's like I don't really care to see it. It's just me. I do think you should give it a shot. If not, if you don't want to go to theaters, because I know it's everything is expensive these days to go and to make budget for everything. But it could come on digital. I think it's not already in digital. I think Killers of the Flower Moon. But yeah, give it a try. Let's jump to our next film, and that's gonna be Wish. So Wish, another Thanksgiving-ish movie, and that's coming out right now. I think Wish, Disney was trying to do like a lot with this film in the sense that it was supposed to be the culmination of their 100 years of animation, and there's like a lot of technological nuances they wanted to try out with mixing CGI and 2D and taking some inspiration from Spider-Verse, which, let's be honest, revolutionized the animation game in Western animation rather in recent years. So I think Wish. I'll go first with my quick thoughts as well. It's been a few weeks since we've seen it. I think Wish was overall a solid movie. I know it's I think the lowest rated Rotten Tomatoes Disney movie score for a Disney movie in years. Like I don't know the last time it was this low. So they're the critics for the most part are pretty low.
Last time it was Chicken Little, apparently.
Chicken Little. I think it's even
lower than that. So
it's lower than Chicken Little. So this is one of the worst. So according to critics, this might just be the worst Disney movie of all time. But I honestly think it wasn't the worst. I think some people might be looking from the wrong angle, like thinking this movie is some kind of like cinematic universe building for Disney. I don't think it was doing that. I think it was just paying homage to a lot of the characters, a lot of the themes of past things. I think overall it's good. I mean, it's not like I always say it's never going to be Disney Renaissance. It's never going to be the 90s, like what the studio is trying to do in the 90s. But it is going to be something that's just good for the kids, good for the, Thanksgiving break and stuff like that. But overall, I'm sitting at 3.5 for the film. I don't think it's the worst Disney movie ever. I think there's a lot of worse movies, to be honest. But is it Disney Renaissance? No. But overall, I think it did the job. I mean, there's some parts that are not that good. There's some songs that are good. Just it is what it is. Nothing special, nothing great, but it's a good, fine movie for kids and families. Zian, what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean, when I saw like the first trailer and whatnot, I thought it looked pretty bad. Obviously, the animation is something that was this hybrid style of 2D and 3D. I was like, I'm not sure how it's going to work, but it ended up working well on screen. It ended up looking like the storybook style of artwork, and the narrative, the way it's shown on in the trailers, it's a little better than that in the film. Like they actually flesh out the main character and what her story is and what she's actually trying to do better. Because in the trailer, it kind of seems like she's just like a kind of like a dumb kid and doesn't really know what she's doing or has her own reasons for trying to steal the wishes and whatnot. But in the film, they really do make it more sincere than that, and her reasoning and her story, and also the villains as well. They make him much more of a true villain, and I think I appreciate that because a lot of times they try to Disney films these days, they try to like blur their line where it's like, oh yeah, they have a good reason and they have their own bad trauma in the past, and that's why they're doing things. They did not go that route. They did not absolve him. He is like a selfish person. He is like an evil person. And I appreciate that. And I think on songs and things of that nature, I think some of them did work very well and they were actually good. The comedy style was much more geared towards younger kids, I think more so than recent Disney films. So I get why maybe some of the critics, older audience would be like, yeah, I'm not clicking with this as much. But I think there is a divide. Like the critics was like 50% or something, but the audience score is like 80 something. So, and we're seeing that too as well with like Hunger Games for some reason. The critic score is so low, it's rotten, but the audience score is very high. And I guess there is this divide going on right now between some of these films. And I think for Wish, it is more towards what the audience is thinking, where it is a decent film. I think they do a good job kind of paying homage to like the different characters and things in Disney of the past without relying on it too much or making it so overt. And all these things of, this means this character becomes that, or this is the prequel for that, or there's like an origin story, or like a shared universe. I agree with Shiraz. I don't think that's what they were doing. I don't think that's anything like what they were trying to allude. I think they were just paying respect, paying homage to like the very classic Disney stories and the characters and kind of embodying them in these new characters in a way. So I think that all worked well, and it wasn't as bad as a movie as the critics are saying or making it. I think it was a decent film, and it had like a good, sincere story to tell.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. You made the Rotten Tomatoes thing. It's funny. Every single film we discuss, and Napoleon's about to join that club, is rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. Like Napoleon is 1% away, so it's sitting on the edge. So basically, all the films we've been seeing for this Thanksgiving weekend, a lot of them are getting pretty poor reviews overall. Let's see, like, the audience score has been high. Last film in a movie that is not getting poor reviews. That's Godzilla -1, currently 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Everyone has been singing the praise for this one. This is Toho's latest Godzilla film. For those who don't know like the backstory, I'll give you a quick one. I'll review this one solo. Toho owns the Japanese rights of Godzilla. Legendary owns the Western American Hollywood rights for Godzilla. They can both release Godzilla films as long as it's not in the same year. So as you saw, Shin Godzilla came out the year before Godzilla vs. Kong, and now Godzilla -1 is coming out 1 year before Godzilla X Kong next year. So you're getting back and forth, and you get to see two different styles of treating this like legend, of fiction, and that's Godzilla. So very different approaches. I mean, in the Legendary's versions of the film, Godzilla's kind of like this. He's not a hero, but he's like a being that kind of is neutral and agnostic to anything that's happening in the world, doesn't really take sides. And then because of that, he just kind of stops destruction. I think Godzilla's main point in the American side of things is that if anything's hurting the planet, including humans, it will come and kind of take care of things. Whereas in Japanese Godzilla, you get the sense that a lot of the fears, post-war fears, coming out of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs and everything that happened in World War II, a lot of them manifest into these Godzilla stories, and they deal with kind of post-war trauma, and that's what Godzilla -1 is all about. It's all about, it takes place during World War II, and it's a very, very well-made historical piece looking at the Japanese side, Japanese point of view of Godzilla, of the war, and then how Godzilla comes at this point of time in the war where nothing can stop it. And the movie's not out yet, so I'm not going to spoil it. It's coming out on December 1 in America. It's out in Japan, but it's out on December 1 in America. I do encourage you guys to see it. It is quite good. I think the cast is very strong. I think the story is very palpable. The biggest complaint that all three of us have had in the past with Godzilla movies is that the human characters are incredibly boring, that they're kind of hard to get into, or they spend too much time on the human characters. In this film, they do spend a lot of time with the human characters. Godzilla doesn't have that much screen time. When he does, it's crazy. But it really is about the human characters. It's centered on one group of three people. And I think it's very compelling. I really like the story of PTSD and post-war trauma and how to deal with what you've seen out there, and then how do you deal with the present of like Godzilla, and how did that work out. I think it's a very good movie. I don't think it's as artistically extreme and like layered as Shin Godzilla was, which took really interesting liberties with Godzilla as a character, and a lot of interesting like the angels coming out of Godzilla's back. That was crazy talk back then. But this is more like your standard Godzilla. It's very much like the first Godzilla movie in the 40s. 50s rather. I think it's reminiscent of that. And when the main theme song played of Godzilla, the Godzilla theme song of Toho, everyone in our press screening crowd were like going crazy. And actually, the screening we were at was at a Japanese society near the UN building in New York. So it was really about a cultural screening. So everyone who was there, it was a mix of press, but also a lot of locals, a lot of Japanese locals who were watching, and they were just all going crazy. And it felt like being in a crowd with people who are just excited about this movie. So I give it high praise as well. I mean, I give it 4 stars personally. It's your standard monster movie for the most part. When the action starts happening, when Godzilla's doing his destruction, CGI is crisp, things are looking good. Nothing like too crazy. The ending has its one big shock value moment, so I think it's worth seeing for that too. But overall, I think it was quite good, and I do recommend people checking it out. Well, from there, I think that covers all of our topics. I do want to reiterate and close with the same thing we closed with last time. And I just want to reiterate that in the end, the most important thing is what's happening in the real world. While we can have some escapism for 20, 30 minutes like we shared right now together, it is important to realize that there is death and destruction out there, and it's our voice collectively that can be used to help. And I just want to reiterate that 14,000 Palestinians have been killed in the last 6 weeks. This is one of the most gravest killings we've seen in years. And when you do a population comparison from to another country, that's the equivalent of 2 million Americans being killed. Like, think about that. Like, their population is very small, and the average age reportedly is 5 years old of the people dying. So this is something to really remember. And I want to reiterate: please don't get dehumanized. It's very easy to see a number like 14,000 and be like, oh, like it's just 14,000. But this is actually very. Each of those lives are people. They're people with full lives, dreams, hopes, all that. So it's important to remember that. Be cognizant of that. You know. And I said this quote last time, and I'll say it again. I mean, if you ever looked at any mass atrocity in human history and asked yourself, how did the world allow this to happen? What would I do if I was in that scenario? Your answer is now. You're in the present. It's happening as we speak. So use your voice. Call for ceasefire now. Check the links in the description to learn more. From the Farooqi Bros, we'll see you next time. Peace out.